Okay, so this is the fourth and final part of our foreshortening Conte. I'm going to show you specifically how to use the white charcoal and resolve the darks and the lights in the image. As you can see here, I've blurred out the face because as you work these images, they tend to get muddy if you do too much layering. So I decided to ruin something to show you that it's always possible to resurrect. So now I'm just pulling light back out. Pretty aggressive, though sometimes I use a little less pressure to create subtle tonal modulation. Concentrating on her brow, correcting the eye angle, the light on her forehead. And again, just doing some light hatching to reduce the value of that sanguine. Also to mix it in a little bit. Getting rid of the eraser marks with a brush and my finder. Some light underneath her eye and in that right cheek of hers, our left. Just kind of lightening the value a little bit. Not necessarily to keep it that way, just to clean up some of the layers. Get it ready for some re-injection of other colors. Also to get rid of the gray pallor. I'm going to have to put more Conte sanguine down in order to get that flesh tone to be more natural. Using the negative space to correct her profile. Using the eraser to correct her profile. A little bit of hair behind her forehead. Sclera treatment. I know the left sclera is not as bright as the right one is, but I'm going to go ahead and lighten it up anyway. I'm going to blend in the shadow here, and I'm going to show you that the areas where you haven't put down any black, like in that arm just below, when you erase out, you don't get that muddiness. But if we make a mistake and put too much bistre or too much black into the flesh, we have to kind of restart so that we don't have that ugly pallor to the skin. Doing some hatching and some blending to get that cast shadow from the upper arm onto the lower arm. Blending it in with my eraser, pulling out more light. Use my charcoal pencil here to start to work on this hand and to do some contour lining. Again, as long as you keep a nice open contour, it's not too big a problem. Bistre to round out that arm, eraser to blend it. Erasers are not just for erasing, they're also for blending. So now the face seems pretty prepped, so I'm going to go ahead and inject some sanguine into it. Look at how the sanguine doesn't show up very brightly over the gray or the black. But the minute you put over an erased area, like her face or this passage, or the white of the page, it's very intense. So that just shows you how erasing can give you a prepped surface. Some little hatching marks. I'm drawing very small, so I have to use hatching instead of the side of my chalk. You guys don't have that problem because you're working at a larger scale. But hatching is a good way to inject tone into a small area. Here I'm using a paper stomp to blend and transition. You can use a Q-tip or a twisted up tissue or even a paintbrush. A tiny paintbrush if it's a tiny drawing. Now it may look like I'm winding right back where I started from, but at least it's not gray and muddy. And I just come right back with my eraser and start pulling out those lights again. It may seem like it's redundant, but you'll notice that her skin is already starting to get back to a flesh tone instead of that gray pallor we had earlier. Just little moves, nothing dramatic. Shapes. I'm just looking at shapes of light against shapes of dark. Now I'm going to use some of my Bistray to deepen that shadow on the other side of that light part. Blend it in with my eraser. Soften the edge. Do the same thing in her temple. That face turns in space. Now I'm going to start using my charcoal pencil to get some linearity back in the face. You can see the minute that I add that black in, it starts to get a lot more focused. I think she's wearing some eyeliner, so in this case I would darken underneath her eye. A little bit of contouring around the temple and the cheek, reshaping things. Now the other eye. Pupil first, iris, upper lid, darker always. Nostril, tip of nose, lips. Remember, the upper lip is always darker than the lower lip. So I'm actually drawing the shadow beneath her lower lip, not the lower lip itself. Deepening with the Bistray to the side of her nose. The shadow underneath her nose. Chin. A little bit of contouring with Bistray to push that chin forward. And then some hatching with the black charcoal pencil and some contouring to shape the chin again. I notice here she has a necklace on, so I draw it in. I think I also noticed that she has a gauge in her ear. Eyebrow. A little bit more depth with the charcoal pencil can be achieved just by small little hatchings. Deepen the hair. Here comes the gauge. Little flicks of hair coming from off the edge and in the edge, evoking some of those curls. And these, even some stray hairs, kind of flyaway hairs. They start from the outside and work their way in. Deepening that shadow underneath her chin, underneath her lip. Little crease. Reshaping her hairline. Putting that curl that's falling down over her face. I feel like at this point I want to modulate the background a little bit more with color. So I lay down some sanguine, some Bistray. And notice I'm real cautious not to be cautious. I pull those tones right over her edge. And you can see as I soften with my stomp, I pull it over the edge and she pops forward. Softening that line that goes behind her chin really helps her chin to come forward. Now I'm putting some little indications of curls and highlights with the eraser. Some little contours to make those lights pop a little bit more, become more active. Put a contour around her shoulder. And then I notice something's wrong. Her shoulder's too short. So what I do is I just erase back. And notice I don't care about the shape. I just erase over the edge of her form, right out into the background, aggressively. And then I contour it to get my shape right. Use my eraser to bring out the light and get the form correct. There's a thrust of her arm away from, in this case, the shark, which I think is pretty good in expression. More B-straight for the shadow, more black to deepen it, and then some more Conte, sanguine Conte. Then I use my eraser to blend, to pull out reflected highlights. To lighten her skin tone. That really big light of, or area of light. Then I use the negative space, and I soften. That looks a lot better proportionately now. I love doing this, pulling the background over the edge so that you get a little bit of passage from the negative space into the positive space. If you look at edges in paintings, there's a lot of gaps in the figure where the negative space actually overtakes the edge of the form. Heightening. I notice that this crease is a little too high, so I erase it. Broaden that shoulder area. Now I'm going to work on the fingers. Deepen the shadow a little bit. I just use my contouring charcoal pencil for contouring. And I'm working the negative space with hatching, just to push the light forward. Then I notice that finger's angled too shallow, so I angle it upward. There we go. Erase out some light. Erase out some light. Fingernail, tip of finger. Erase out more light. Some cast shadow with some hatching. Some more contouring. Back and forth, back and forth. Then I put some sanguine down to colorize the skin. Blend it in with my stomp or with my paintbrush. And then erase out light again. I may be making it more tedious than it needs to be, but it's my process. Some of you have different processes. It's what we wind up with that's important. It's the light, it's the shadow, it's the form. Some more darker tones. Look how I went over the edge. And then blend it in. Turn that form in space. Pull it over the edge. Pull out some reflected light. Figure ground, push, pull. Now I'm putting some little darker areas to break up the space, some broken contours. I'm not coloring all over it. I'm taking the shapes and dividing them up and making more shapes. Shapes within shapes. I'm really using my eraser to mix. And then I put it on its side and I blend again to push all of that back. Pull it over the edge a little bit, soften the edge a little bit. I'm not just stopping at the edge, I'm actually letting the eraser ride up over the edge.
Okay, so now we're going to start with the white Conte. You'll notice that I make very small moves. I forgot the eyebrow there, so I had to pull out the charcoal pencil again. Just little flicks, little hints of the lightest lights. These are usually towards the middle of the erased areas that shine on the forehead, or brow, or cheek. I'm concentrating on the face, but that's not the whole thing. You do the whole body in the lightest lights with these white little accents, hair shine, her sclera in her eyes, little curve marks to indicate curl highlights, even the flyaway hairs. You can see I've never done spaghetti the whole time. You can use hatching to broaden the white Conte areas. Then I use my eraser to just kind of blend them in. But you don't want to overblend. Leave some of it just pure white. When you get into things like Conte and pastel, which are meant to be layered, you got to do a little bit of blending, and the eraser works well. There you saw me dropping a shadow from her lid onto her eyeball, from her top lip onto her bottom lip. This eye just doesn't seem to have the glint that I want, so I erase again. Darken the iris and the under layer of her lower lid, and then boink, boink, just a little dot or two of white. Boink. Little black to accent it. Boink, boink. Just touches. You don't have to go crazy anymore. Again, you can use tissue paper or a Q-tip to blend, to refine. Eyebrow, though. Just a little touch right underneath the shading. Boink, boink, boink. Just a touch. Shading the sclera again. Remember, the sclera aren't white, they're gray. So we're doing a push and pull again, laying down tone, erasing tone, blending tone, back and forth. So this is how it should wind up looking. Obviously mine's not done, but this is the type of activity you should see not only in the face, but everywhere. See you next class.